Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peg Pennington, president of More Esteem, and I'm delighted that you're here with us today to talk about process design and think about ways that process design can help you move forward in your organization. And today we have Ellen Milnes is here with us as well. She's our director of marketing, and she's going to be watching your Q&A. And so if she sees anything, she has any questions, that she is going to interrupt me just in case I miss those. And you know what? I love to see people populating that Q&A already. And if you have been to any of these sessions that we've had during, really starting from the pandemic, I like to be conversational and I love to hear from everybody. And for me, I always know there's a lot of ops people on the phone or on this webinar, and I just feel like I'm talking to my people, that they get me, they understand that all about standard work and FMEAs, and it's always just fun for us to have this community together. So I know that we're 18 months into the pandemic, but I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to put those into the chat, and I'll look at the chat session. But if you have questions about what you want to stop me, you want me to talk about something a little bit more, put those in the Q&A, and Ellen will interrupt me. And this session is being recorded. If you have to hurry up and get to another meeting, you certainly can come back. We'll be sending that out and watch the second half. So I want to ask you a question, and this is where I want all of you to open up that chat and populate it. How many of you had to redesign a process last year quickly? That you had to do something during the pandemic, and maybe what was that process? So things changed. I think More Esteem, we all went home at the end of February. We're definitely a work from work company, and even though we're a technology company, it was still a drastic change. So how many of you had to Todd, hey Todd, how are you? You just put your answer right in there in that chat session. And healthcare organizations had to redesign, construction meetings, decontamination processes. Consultants needing to shift to remote delivery. So I want to ask you, how many of you were not thrilled with the results of that first time out? Like you put in a process and you did it quickly, because I know we did that, and we had some fits and starts. So did all of you were you wildly successful that first one, or did you have some issues? I just see one. Brian's okay with that redesign process. So so if it failed, this will be, I won't keep pestering you with questions, but if you had a failure on that first redesign, why did you think that you didn't get the intended results? This is interesting. Could not read physical cues. Adoption's a struggle. Lack of change management. I think we underestimate the impact of change management, for sure. Lack of times, groups located in different countries. That is interesting. Lack of infrastructure for online meetings. Yeah, this is all, really good feedback in terms of, thinking about, we're putting in a new process, and that process didn't work. But the thing is, we're having to redesign processes all the time. There's shorter product life cycles. Even in the insurance, we're going to have, we might have a product and it just has, an 18-month life cycle, and then we're going to have another product that follows on to that. Our competitors might cause us to actually have to redesign a process, and rising quality expectations. And of course, the circumstances of a global pandemic, which many of you mentioned in that chat window, in terms of, how quickly you had to redesign a process, whether, it's how do your teams meet, how are we going to satisfy our customers? So there is, there's a lot of great stories from 2020, but there's a lot of horror stories from 2020. And the point I want you to take away is that when we redesign these processes, real people are involved in them. So whether it's you sitting in your car waiting to get vaccinated, or, sitting outside of your car because you can't see somebody in the hospital that's your loved one, real people are involved in that. So during normal times, that process redesign, it's difficult to do quickly. So you take a global pandemic when we can't even gather together like we would normally. We would, if it was during non-COVID times and they said, hey, you have to redesign this process, I think most of us in this on this call would get together in a room, then maybe go to Gemba. Let's actually see and watch that process. Well, in this particular case, we couldn't do that. Okay, we couldn't necessarily go to Gemba, or not all of us could go to Gemba, and we certainly couldn't be together. And I think somebody was talking about body language and seeing how people are adopting that. We couldn't even see that because we're, on Zoom calls, and I know I have Zoom calls with clients and sometimes I can't even see them, so it's really just a phone call. So we want to change processes, we want to improve processes, but I think for most of us that are in the process improvement community, we're typically we're measuring process improvements. We're looking at how many improvement projects are we getting through that pipeline? Okay, what's our ROI on those projects? But we're educating people, and we're trying to improve quality, reduce lead time, improve safety, and we're looking at those and measuring those. But do we ever stop to kind of think about, in our community, a lot of our projects, they're rework projects. They're rework because they weren't designed accordingly, okay? Or they were designed and they produced errors, and we didn't have a quick process to actually improve that. So what is PPC? That is your rate of process problem creation, okay? And process problem creation has got to be less than process problem fixing. So that's, imagine like you're the person that has to scoop behind the horses in a parade. Like, you're never going to fix that, right? You constantly have that problem. But the bottom line is here, you have to kind of solve problems faster than you actually create them. And when we think about that, you take that traditional view, let's get better at problem solving. And of course we want to do that. We want to have lots of people in the organization that are capable of solving problems close to where the work is done. But the new challenge is really, how can I avoid problems through design? How can I create a better design in the first place? So that gives us opportunities in that new challenge. So if you're thinking about product launches, I have this new insurance product. What have I learned from the past in terms of how we've launched? What's my voice of the customer telling me? and how do I create a better design first time out? Let's face it, where does a lot of design conversations start? We're maybe huddled in a conference room talking, how do we do this? And then we get one idea up on the board, and that becomes the straw man for the redesign. If we could just, then we put that model up there. And it's not that there's no planning, there's just no planning that respects the variation in the process. So this is a picture of a BMV, and I bet all of you, I actually, have been to the BMV. I have to go within the next 2 weeks because my birthday's coming up, and I just noticed my license needs renewal. And I hope I don't see this, but I'm kind of expecting it, that there's going to be this lots of variation in the process. And we can put a plan in place, but how do we test our designs for some of these issues that come up again and again with our plan? So here's a plan that got put in place. It was executed and was written about in the Wall Street Journal in 2017. You've probably heard of CSX Railroad, and they launched a major process improvement project to improve efficiency. And what actually happens, they put in that major project to improve efficiency, and the project, it just got tangled up all the rail traffic in most of the Midwest because the failure modes, they weren't modeled or predicted or remediated. So what they had done was take out, these 2,300 jobs, and they closed 12 reconfiguration yards. So the result of that was their transit time in hours, went up from the 72 to 446 hours. So huge failure on their part, because again, you're pulling out a resource, and there's opportunities to actually model this when you're designing something and see, what is going to be the effect of removing that resource. So during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time watching Top Chef. And one of my biggest takeaways was that judge asking, did you taste this first? So like going to Gemba and saying, did you actually taste this before you launched your process? And sometimes they're like, no. Again, modeling gives you that opportunity to actually taste test your creation before you launch it. And I think some of you, perhaps, you are schooled in the art of mapping, of value stream mapping, whether it's SciPoc, process maps, value stream maps. You're very schooled in that. But then that idea of creating a model, maybe not so much. And why I think that is because at first it seems really complicated. And it even, I think it sounds complicated. And there's a lot of, maybe the tools, they seem overwhelming and confusing. And some of this design, and it gets into this new design, the curriculum can be a little bit confusing. So we tend to, I think, in our community, we say, let's outsource this to the industrial engineers. Okay, industrial engineers, I love you. We need you on our teams. But this part, of actually saying, I want to design something new and I want to be able to test it quickly, that does not have to be outsourced. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be easy for teams to test and learn. And that's what really I think, when I think about the lean system, you want to build a system where you can test and learn quickly. So we need something new. And I'll call that agile process design. It's a mashup. It's a mashup of design for Six Sigma. And if you look at that approach, this is, it's designed for Six Sigma. Every step in it has value, but we want to go through those steps quicker. Okay. And then we take some of the best of agile software development, where we have sprints, you have a show and tell, so your customers can see, okay, let me see what we're building, let me respond to that quickly. And then we have, again, lean startup, which is very much like this, to me, agile software development. Like, how do we get to the test and learn part of the process really quickly, and then bringing in the best of design thinking. So if you take all of those elements, then you're going to get to this place of agile process design. And I have all of these, I know ops people on the phone, and you are in fact designing new processes, and you might not have thought of yourself as a process designer, but when you get into these extended value streams, these transactional value streams, whether they're, at the bank, at the insurance company, in the sales process, or even on the manufacturing line, you're becoming a designer. And the key elements when we start thinking about designing a new process is the voice of the customer and rapid experimentation. So how can I test this quickly with these ideas? How can I test their questions quickly? A roadmap of questions that create alignment, and virtual process prototyping with iterative learning. So what's this virtual process prototyping? I think of this, how do we build back leaner? How do we take some of the things that we learned from the pandemic by building things virtually, prototypes of a process, so we can go faster with our new process design and understand the effect of variation, understand the effects of capacity with our new process. So the design roadmap, these are going to be very similar to you if you're in a operational excellence role. Define what's the concept, design, optimize, and then verify. I like this roadmap. It's a guide, but there's other roadmaps that can work as well. The main thing is, again, having that common roadmap of critical questions to guide your activity, and realize this is, again, an iterative process, not linear. So in the absence of that roadmap to guide the activity, people apply their creativity in ways that might not be useful or could just be dangerous. Traditionally, and I was talking about this with the design for Six Sigma, is a very straight, rigid path with complex tools, and we're going for that best answer. Okay, narrowing in on that best answer. And traditional design for Six Sigma holds that trial and error is a little bit wasteful, with no trips back to the drawing board, because the trips back to the drawing board are expensive and time consuming. Similarly, when launching a new pharmacy, this is a new children's pharmacy at Akron's Children's Hospital, a pharmacy for children at the hospital. they did a 3P. So if you're very familiar with 3P in the lean process, in terms of a pre-production planning, you would actually go somewhere and physically lay out and understand what are the pinch points in this new process. So you would get walking distances, pinch points, line of sight. I think 3Ps can be very good because you take your people that are working in the process through that. And, actually it's like this going to Gemba before you go and something's completely done. So prototypes, they can generate new ways of thinking. But to have a good idea, what you want to have are lots of good ideas. So think about that slide I showed at the beginning where people are sitting around a conference table and they come up with that one good idea. And what you want to do is have many good ideas. And sometimes I actually tell people that they work with me and we get stuck. I was like, could we just get our first bad idea on paper? So we can start iterating from that first bad idea. And then you have all of these different viewpoints in that room, and you start coming up with 7 or 8 or 9 different ideas. And from that, you're going to get closer to what the customer wants, because you're going to have those different views in the room and people that understand the customer in a different way, and to help design that new process. But thinking about prototyping, you can learn a lot from prototypes and from failure. So you want to have, in this particular case, you can prototype something and it's going to be both fast and cheap, and you can cover a lot more potential design space without being wasteful. So you can embrace that trial and error as a method to encourage creativity. So as you're designing new processes without spending lots of money before you buy any bots, to help you, you can do that what if analysis and help prove or disprove how this process might flow, what the quality might be, or what do you need to have internally to operate at the levels that you want to be at. So when we think about that, embracing iteration, you get close to what that solution is, but then you're going to iterate and fine tune it until you get to that best solution for the customer. And then of course you continually improve. So look at it this way. We define the problem, come up with the concept, design, then verify, then it could be design, verify, optimize, and go through that loop and make that an iterative process. When you are, and I said that all of you are, if you're in the ops community, when you might be making changes that are 30, 60, 90-day changes to the process, but you might be looking at changes that are, we have to be here in a year, or we need to be here in 2 years. They're longer term changes. And you know what? Future state maps, future state value stream maps, that could be all you need. I'm going to tell you, simplest is best. Okay. But sometimes there's more complex elements of the new process that should be prototyped. So how do you test a complicated new service process? We want to respect that variation in the process. So static plans for a new design, that might be enough. If you don't have a lot of variation in your plan, you can have that kind of static value stream map if the inputs are all stable. But many times I would ask you guys, how many of you have processes that are completely stable? You'd say, I don't know. You probably within your organization, you have some processes that are consistently stable and repeatable over time. But within your same organization, you have processes that are probably prone to variation, so they're prone to drift. And you're trying to, over time, let me understand, how does that variation gonna affect my customer? So variation is kind of the thing that demand projects, we're always trying to address that. What is the effect of variation on my process? It trips us up. So the most important thing to consider in any new process is how the process will respond to the stress of that variation. What happens when demand spikes? What happens when the mix of services shifts, or more complex products lead to more errors, or when people don't show up to work, or when uncontrollable external factors make their presence felt, like weather? How about supply chain disruption? How about I can't get a car at the rental counter because they've sold off 2/3 of their fleet during the pandemic? How is that variation going to stress the system? So we can understand a lot more about the proposed design by incorporating the impact of variation. And we can also evaluate alternative designs under the influence of variation. The question is, how do we build prototypes of a service process? Software is a great way to actually do this. So here's my question, how do we build back lean? Thinking back over the last 18 months, what did we learn, and how can we take, since we've all designed new processes, how can we get even better at designing new processes in the future? It's discrete event simulation, building virtual prototypes and digital twins. And this isn't to say you want to stop doing, if you're doing 3 Ps, where you're laying out, you go to Gemba, you keep doing those things. And you start with those future state maps, and it's just going from, I'm going to take that future state map and I'm going to add more information to it so I can build a more robust model of what this process might look like in the future. So why would we want to do this? Because there's some learning here. You're going to have to, learn about modeling, but what's the upside for you? The value of modeling a process is to answer those what if questions. Think about when we think about the lean management system, it is a system of questions. And when you think about what design prototyping allows us to do, is to answer those what if questions. What if, we had to become a virtual organization? What if I could only have so many people in this space at one time? What if I had to, process 1,000 people a day through a stadium to get vaccinations? So those what if questions, you learn what works and what doesn't work, which inputs have the greatest impact to sensitivity analysis, and explore new possibilities. This is lean because you test and learn quickly and cheaply. So what if you were allowed to explore opportunities, test virtually, quickly, safely, and inexpensively, determine your operating parameters? A lot of us study design of experiments on our journey. And again, I think discrete event simulation allows you in that way to model quickly and test those variables. Which variables are going to be the most important for the response variable I'm trying to achieve? understand risk. And what's that variable that we really need to control for? Because if we don't control that variable, I'm going to have a really long lead time for my customer. Think about at the airport, since I know I'm talking to all of these ops people, you probably get frustrated like me. Well, I have everything on a boarding pass now. So new technology, right? But if you don't, and you go to the kiosk to get your boarding pass, I still see those being used pretty frequently, but the kiosk is broken down. Okay, well, what happens if 2 kiosks are broken down? What happens if 3? How often does that happen? What's going to happen to my process for intaking baggage? And how will that lead through the rest of the airport? Those are the kind of things you want to understand. What is the risk of that failure mode? And then, of course, some of you, I'll use another example that you might be in a transactional process and you're looking at, I think if we put a bot, used some automated scripts at one point in our process, this could be very beneficial, but that's going to cost us between $10,000 and $20,000. How's that? Let's model that. We think that machine is going to work 24 hours a day. What's the flow? Is there going to be another bottleneck down there that all we did was move a bottleneck and that costs us $20,000 that now the next step in the process can't keep up? So those are things that you want to be able to model. Understanding the levers. I think another thing sometimes that scares people is this could be it's big, it's expensive, and it's kind of complicated to get there. We have something that everybody could use, in terms of if you can map a process, you could quickly understand and model in a discrete event simulation what does the flow of my process look like. And even if you're not using Process Playground, you can use discrete event simulation tools to model that. Shows risk, saves money, highlights all of your pinch points. It allows you to, so just that one good idea allows you to evaluate a wide range of what if scenarios very quickly and inexpensively. So you can reconfigure designs. You can make them as crazy or as counterintuitive to the pilot in a physical environment, as your creativity allows. So the value of modeling a process is to answer what if questions, to learn what works and what doesn't work, which inputs have the greatest impact, and explore new possibilities. It could be as something like the bag drop at the airport to hospital check-in during COVID, which we did have the opportunity to work with a few healthcare organizations to just look at what their process is and model their process and think about clinic routing. You don't want to start here, okay? This is the map of the U.S. Department of Defense. That's their acquisition process. And if you came and said, let's model this, I'd, probably pass out, but then I'd be, where's your pinch point? Only model that part that you're really trying to test and learn, okay, that you care about changing. Simplicity is the key to this, this simplicity of the process. So I'm going to show you just a little behind the scenes here of our, before I show this, I'm going to just pause for a second and just ask. So during COVID, you had to stand up new processes, and some of you, especially in healthcare, had to stand up new high volume processes in terms of like vaccinations, or even like checking people in, doing COVID checks, and not creating long lines. Did anybody use a model? Did you do any? Did you have people that did a simulation, or did you kind of just, hey, back of the hand, let's do some math. If we can give them a shot in 5 minutes, we have this many people, you know, how fast can they get through this process? How many can we see a day? Or, you know, maybe another process. You guys chat that in there. Did anybody model anything, or did they just, were they do test and learn? You don't want to be shy. Test and learn. Okay. Okay, so the test and learn process, that's lots of mistakes, you know, but everybody here knows, let's test and learn. And when we're going to try to do something quick, let's test and learn. How, what's the simplest thing we can do to kind of test and learn? But modeling a model, and I pulled one up here, can allow you to get closer to a good test, okay, cheaply and quickly. And if you have that back of a pencil, your future state map, this is what we think, or this is what our new process and design is going to look like. You take a portion of that, you can create that model with variation and see quickly, let me ask these 3 questions. This is really important, okay? What are we going to do if we have vaccines at the end of the day? Like how many do we think we could have left over? Let's model that. How long do we think it's going to take people to get through this line? Let's model that. What are the different scenarios? And then you stand it up and keep that test and learn going. And you start asking, are the parameters that I'm seeing, is that what we had in our model? Why are they different? And again, this gets to that questioning process, because when you start saying, we think it's going to take 5 minutes and it's taking 7, why is it taking 7? It's part of the check-in process. Well, okay, we need to get that back to 5. What can we do? So having that, putting those numbers down and having that hypothesis is really important, because then when you test against that, it allows you to understand, why is this process either performing better or worse than expected? So I'm going to start in here. This is our engine room, and you guys can get a 30-day free trial. And I think some of you on the phone probably have it. This is under modeling. You go to process model. We're going to launch it. And this would give me a blank one. And I'm going to the shortest checkout line. So just so we can pull one up to take a look at it and see how it runs. And you guys are, again, I'm just assuming because you're ops people, but I'm always looking, to get into that shortest checkout line. And I'm always trying to improve my skills as a self-checkout person. I don't know if some of you are thinking like that as well, but I certainly do. So this is just a simple model. And I put in here, we have customers coming into the process. Those customers are going to choose the shortest checkout line here. And I'm going to run that model. So again, this would be something that anybody in the ops community could quickly build. And it's going to simulate 100 minutes. And I'm going to pull that one I pulled that through the process so we could get done. And I saw that, show the results here for this. So I can see I have one server here, one server here, and so I have one server in each one of these particular processes. But what happens if in this process, I put my server in, and you know what, they are new to the process. Okay, so they're going to take a little bit longer. So we had 32 get through that process. Okay, so this particular person, yep, I did that. Thank you. And now I have to get my glasses out. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay, so I have a new hire right here, and we had 32. So what happens if, this particular person has a longer training period? They maybe don't know how part of the system runs. They take a little bit more. It looks like people are going through checkout lane number 2, 18, and 14. I didn't check that count that very first time. But we can see my total lead time here went up to 4 minutes. And I think it was less than a minute before. From 32, I only had 13 get through this system. So those are all kinds of things that we can study and say, what if there's a learning curve here at the beginning of the process? What if, you have somebody there that's under 21 and they have to, people are buying alcohol. I have to call. So we know that person's going to take a little bit longer because somebody has to come and scan that alcohol. So there's all kinds of little things that might create that variation in the process, but you can quickly model that. And I see I have, Kevin. Hey, Kevin. He's telling me I had 33 previous. Thank you. So just those kind of little nuances, when you are designing your process, you're able to quickly think about the variation, the number of people, some of the quality rework issues that you might have. And then when rework is coming back into your process. Oh, and we don't want that going back to that Department of Defense. We don't want you to model that. We just want you to model those little parts of your process that give you the insurance to go to your leadership team when you're saying, we're going to have some bots, and we had that. We think that this is how long they'll take. This is how we're going to control flow after that part of the process, and it'll reduce our lead time by this amount. Arnold, you have a long message for me. I'm gonna have to take a second to read that here. I might hang on to that one and get back with you. Let me just pause for a second while I'm showing this shortest checkout line, and see if anybody has some additional questions for me in thinking about designing new processes.
Hey, Peg, we don't have any questions yet, but I would like to share a comment that came in through the Q&A. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but it's from Dave Whitman. And he gave a shout out to Lars and Dave Mulaney in actually helping him to use the software to design the process for their daily COVID testing for employees and vaccine distribution. So they Yeah, they use the software to identify how to configure and understand full capacity, testing different number of stations within the process, and identifying staffing models throughout a given day. So his shout out to us was just an endorsement to say this is a
Oh,
powerful tool
yeah,
and it
thank
helped them.
you. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. Um, well, that's a time, especially when you think about during COVID, where you can't go to Gemba, so actually having the ability to model that process quickly. And I'm not an industrial engineer. I can tell you that I can use this to quickly model processes and show people, here's the effect of changing that in changing your capacity. And that's what I think as a ops person, a lot of times you are designing new processes. So to be able to go back to your leadership team and have some confidence about the variables, because if you're designing a new process, you can't do a DOE on it, but this is a way for you to, again, get that test and learn and understand your variables. And you might launch and that variable is going to be different, but at least you have some information that you've been thinking about and testing that variable ahead of time before you launch that new process and thinking about it. And I was going to tell you that, the best thing you could do, build to think, explore and create, test safely and quickly, establish your operating parameters, evaluate risk, and again, make that case to your leadership team. So Lars, he's our vice president of R&D, and he's amazing. He's brilliant. He is gonna, and worked with David on their process at the hospital. He's gonna have a Process Playground Master Series on September 23rd and 30th. So we will, if you're on this recording or participated, you'll get an invitation to that. But if you're like, I wanna do this ahead of time, I wanna get a trial of this, go to our engine room website, go to More Steam Engine Room, you can get a free trial. And in that, with our help system, there's an entire help system about, it's called Kathy's Best Worst. And you can go through that and it'll help you learn how to create that first model. And it's a brat stand. So it's very easy. You get, a brat stand selling one brat, and then there's ketchup and mustard, which you would never put ketchup on a brat. You guys know that, just mustard. But then she gets a few more pieces of inventory. Then she gets her nephew helping her. So it's a very easy model to just go in there and kind of sample that. And if you do that, send me some feedback on peg@moresteam.com. Let me know, how did that go? What did you think? Were you able to, try something at work and create a model at work to show your team, so that you're like, okay, here's what the variation is going to do to our process. And we can all kind of test and learn together. So before I go, oh, great to use. Yeah, I heard it. Great to use discrete event simulation. Too many managers just like to guess. Yeah, so this is framing up your guesses. You can kind of share it with them like that, framing up your guesses. So yeah, I encourage you. You're going to get an invitation to join us in September. That's going to be our back to school event. And if you're in Columbus or even in the surrounding community, write this down. We're going to have an open house on September 22nd from 4:30 to 6:30. So you're all invited to that. You're going to see some of our new products, Lean Arcade, our new simulation, Whiplash. It's pretty cool. It's going to be a backlog simulation. So September 22nd is our open house. Let me know if you're coming, Peg@Moresteam. And the other thing is back to school. So you know, we're ready to all get back to school. So I would leave you with, I think, is there any more questions? And I will be sharing this presentation in our upcoming master series. Alan, what's up?
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that you had seen that question because someone commented about, are there other trainings on the subject? And relative to this process modeling topic, as you said earlier, that Lars is offering a master series on September 23rd and 30th. So that'll be a little package of activities to include offline, as well as a couple of live sessions with him.
Okay, that's great. Yep, that's all coming up. I got my other email. This is probably wasteful, but my developers, you know, they like to create emails. So I, you know, have a couple of different ones there, but Peg's easy to remember, peg@moresteam.com. And I would leave you with, your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. So I think it's good to can finish with dumbing and remember that, you know, your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. So it's nice. I hope to see everybody in person soon. And if you're in the Columbus area, even if you're not and you want a road trip, you know, come to Moresteam and you can see our new facility and meet some of our new developers that we hired during the pandemic. And we loved, you know, all of our people, we love to meet our customers. So you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I hope to see you back here soon. Thank you.